Okay, Coach McCurdy, thank you for participating in this research project where we are looking at the history of education in Northwest Oklahoma City. First, let's start with, what year did you graduate from Douglas?
I graduated in 1975.
1975. So what was it like when you were going to school here?
Well, I am a product of Oklahoma City Public School education, born and raised, and I came here, I transferred from Bishop McGinnis in 1973, which is a private Catholic school, and went to Harmony Elementary School, which was, my students recognize that as Marcus Garvey, over 24, Northeast 24. And so I spent 4 years in the Catholic school program, Corpus Christi Catholic School. I followed my sister and my cousin. And then 2 years at Bishop McGinnis. That was my 7th grade to my 10th grade year. So when I got to Douglas, it was really, really quite thrilling. I had always dreamed about being a Douglas Trojan, growing up here on the east side, all the legendary teams and the culture and the music, and the band was incredible. And either you dreamed about being in the band or the football or the basketball program. I was a basketball player, so this was the New York Knicks. This was a place to come if you really had skills. You know, you wanted to be with the best. So it was full of that year I got here in 1973, 74. Was everything I expected. If you ever seen the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, when I was my freshman and sophomore year, I did everything I could to stay out of school. You know, put thermometer, hot water bottle on me and everything. And Mom, I think I need to stay in. And I said, no, you're going to school. So, but when I got to Douglas that fall in '73, everything had changed. I coughed all night and was really sick. I'm getting up going to school, and Mom said, no, you need to stay home. It had reversed. And I said, oh no, I can't miss a day at Douglas. There was so much tradition and all. I remember my first day, I had reunited with a lot of students I had gone to elementary school with. And we had played in basketball league together, 4th Street Y. This was before AAU and club basketball. Everybody played for the elementary school. And we played each other, Harmony, Crescent Hills, Page, Culberson, these are some oilers, Edwards, and they were all on the east side. Garden Oaks, we'd all play each other. It's a great league, and right down on 4th. And we played baseball for our school. We played Little League football. We did all that. So we grew up, you've heard the story that it takes a village to raise a child. We grew up playing each other, good friends with each other. Well, that 1971, 72 was the experiment, social educational experiment called the finger plane. And that's when busing hit Oklahoma City. Of course, was it Plessy versus Ferguson, Brown versus Board of Education? Mm-hmm. It was in the 50s, 1954. Well, it took some 25 years before the actual implementation of that. My parents grew up in segregated Oklahoma in the historically black high schools. My mother graduated from Booker T. Washington in Enid, Oklahoma. My father from Hartshorn, just a few miles from McAllister, and he graduated from Phyllis Wheatley High School. So when that mandatory desegregation of public schools hit, it hit like a time bomb. So in my neighborhood, by the state capitol, across the street was Northwest Classic. I was supposed to go to Northwest Classic. And around the corner was Southeast. Directly, the block over, I grew up on 20th, they grew up on 19th was US Grant. So the finger plane was splinter neighborhoods. You could be right in Carverdale or in a district like that and get bused to Capitol Hill or US Grant or Southeast. And violence hit. I mean, there were students white students that were waiting when they got off the bus with boards and nails and chains, and it was horrific. And so when I got here, the white students were being bussed in for the first time in public school history. We were being bussed in white schools. And my first day here, we've heard this saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it was the people in the cafeteria were our, church mothers at church. Some of the teachers were deacons and, lived in the neighborhood. So we ended up getting the same nurturing that we got at home. And I believe the village is the home, the church, and the school. Everybody talks about the village, but nobody's identified the village. So everything was just being reciprocated. You got the same thing everywhere you went. There were no holes in the system. So the net was very, very secure and very tight. So when I got here, my first day of school, I'm in the cafeteria and I'm coming out and I had seen people I had not gone to school with since the 6th grade. And it was just a union, a family reunion. And we were seniors going to be seniors together. So they were juniors and I saw so many good friends, Allison, and all of us that we went to school together. And we, to this day, very like brothers. But so I'm getting my tray and I'm walking through and I come out and the cafeteria looked like my home. There was a big old spoon, big old fork on the wall, which you see almost in every African American's house. And the food was delicious. I remember the cinnamon rolls, the free breakfasts was as big as a plate. And everybody came to school before time. There was a radio station program before the bell rang. And we had a school newspaper. And when it would come out, people would run to get it because there was dedications and who's doing what. And so you could call in or write in if you want this song played to whoever your sweetheart was or who you take into the prom. And everybody's just listening here, right? And if you ever seen Lean on Me, where they are singing that, East Side High in the bathroom, we had a talent show that was so fabulous. And they are singing in the bathroom, a cappella, just as anything as America Got Talent or anything you ever want to hear. And teachers, the whole student body would just be stopping and listening. The assistant principals, we called them vice principals then, would be standing and listening for about 2 or 3 minutes. It was so melodic and harmonic. And then they said, okay, now let's break it up, let's go. But they're gonna get a good earful too. And it was so much culture. The talent show was so famous. And the rival between us and Booker T. Washington, those are the two in Tulsa, Oklahoma, historic black high schools, oldest and the biggest. And when we would have our talent show, I'm talking about what I saw, not what I heard. 23 charter buses, Tulsa, Washington would bring down. And they would line up for the talent show. And when we would play Booker T in football and basketball, that same amount of buses would come down. And this was the fairgrounds. And so the football field was the old stock car races. And so when I went first to a football game, I'm thinking, this is the hardest stadium I've ever seen. I mean, it was just huge. And then they dug out a track around it. And there was some great football. I think about 9 people went to the NFL out of the system. And we watched those games and they'd get us in football and we said, well, we're gonna get you back in basketball. And so the window, I don't know if you've ever heard, anybody tell you about the window, that was the center of the school's social life. It was right next to the office. And it was a cement portion where you could sit down, kind of like a built-in bench. And the atrium of the garden was in the middle of the school. The school went all the way around it, where the benches and the garden was. And so, we look out there, but you'd have to come down one hall and go down the other hall. and the pecking order, or the social caste system was set. Letterman, athletes, most popular, seniors, set there. So if you were underclassmen, you had to just keep on walking. It's like when we used to go to the zoo. When I grew up, it was just a cultural rite of passage. And so everybody who's everybody came by, because that was the center of the hub of the school. And it was so famous that when you got your right to sit there as a senior athlete or a star, I mean, your seat was reserved. People would get up and move when it was time for your seat. And it was the funnest thing. The teachers, the education level was second to none. We believe, the times of segregation, the teachers were so incredible. The attire, I tell our students all the time, if you look at an old yearbook, the seniors all would dress alike. We wore ties, and bow ties had just come back in. And so we were all in bow ties and posted up. And if I look at classes in the 60s and the 50s, they would have the mink, the white shawl on and pearls. And the entry level degree almost was a master's degree back then. And, some doctorate principles and lettering and the demand for excellence in the classroom could not to be understated or denied. And you were going to get it, And the percentages of those dropping out who didn't graduate was so much lower then. So had a wonderful experience my 2 years. Now in between my junior and senior year, I came here to play for Coach Lawrence Cudjoe basketball, and I had gotten a letter from the OSSAA saying that I was my academic transfer didn't go through. So I had to, and that day you had to sit down 2 semesters. Not just, now you can play JV, junior varsity, but you can't participate in varsity. Well, back then, you couldn't participate in anything. So I lost totally my junior year for my transfer. And so even though I had transferred under academic requests, because they had a technical school here then, which was incredible. And me being a senior seminar teacher, encouraging, preparing them for college, as a twofold, also career ready as well. Because we're needing more, as you see, economic, black businesses owned, and that classic debate at the turn of the century, W.E.B. Du Bois, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois said, Booker T. Washington, when you studied that in class, turned out both of them were right. And Booker T. was like, we need to work, and we need to have a trade. And W.E.B. Du Bois, famous, is a talented 10th. We demand more. And the only way that equality was going to come was through academic excellence. That's going to prove, equality. And Booker T. was, nothing like working hard and having a hard day's work and honest living, that they will respect and say that, you are not subhuman, you're talented, you're gifted. And it turned out both of them were right, because he was one of the founders of Tuskegee Institute. And you could come out with a formal academic degree, but also in brick masonry, carpentry, plumbing. So you hear the historic, wonderful townships of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, and the Harlem Renaissance, and the Deep Deuce here were some of the greatest black townships and businesses. They said in Tulsa and Black Wall Street, the dollar turned over 20 to 30 times before it left the community. And economic empowerment was because you had barbers, you had plumbers, carpenters, lawyers, accountants, you had as well as plumbers and welders and engineers. And so whatever you needed, you're able to find right there in Black Wall Street. House renovations or seamstress or upholstery, and it was just incredible. And I say, that time now needs to be revisited like never before. So that Votech Center right here at Douglas was incredible. I had took wood shop, I had taken printing, and we literally had to set the type and send through. We do stuff for the school or the newspaper or the community businesses, and we would actually do the advertisement, and with picas and rulers, and we'd block it, and we'd have to ink the machine and send it through. This is how, and it would mass produce printouts.
Wow.
And it was awesome, because you could finish your Douglas with a apprenticeship, or with being a journeyman or electrician or seamstress, auto mechanics, brick masonry. It was incredible. Well, since then, they tore that down, and now you have Francis Tuttle on Metro Tech. And so all the public schools go to one of those. And I understand that. But in that system, it was so prestigious. You could come out with a high school diploma and ready to start your career. It was college or career. So many cultures. Like in Jewish culture, you came out with a formal education and a trade as well. So that way you always had something to fall back on.
Right.
So no matter what the economy is, I can't hardly get a carpenter or a plumber. That's how much they are in demand. So I'm telling my students, as long as, like nursing, it's gonna always be people sick. As long as, I don't care if it's the new Teslas and electronic cars, they're gonna always need to be repaired. So find you something that you can do with your hands and you can work for yourself. And so that's the Douglas High School, Frederick A. Douglas High School that I graduated from. I mean, the music, our choir would record albums every year. And they were legendary and would tour. I'm telling you, they were on line with the Fifth Kings, Jubilee Singers. That's how talented they were. Gospel choir, and the talent show, we would record that every year. I mean, one young man sounded just like Donny Hathaway. He played and sang extensions of a man, and we sound like the Delphonics and the Temptations, and it was just the most incredible thing to come from, a private school setting, and then to come back over here. That we launched literally Rhodes Scholars, doctors, lawyers, people going to the Ivy League, Penn, Harvard, postgraduates everywhere because of the level of education that was demanded. It was rigorous, it was stringent. We just got out of a meeting talking about the norms and making sure we teach the standards. And I'm old school enough to remember, the education then was better than it is now without all the new terms and people leaving the teaching profession left and right because they're not able to teach. And of course the economic pain. But so much we had done so much better with the reading and the writing, the arithmetic, the grade level reading, the memory work. It's one of the things I notice students, they just are really lacking. Oral presentation, standing and reading, learning leadership, priming you for taking your place in society. Manners was stressed. Excuse me, thank you, pardon me, thank you. I'll give out candy and I'll just, hard candy, they call it old people's candy. Coach, you gonna give us some of that old people's candy? And I just they'll go back to their seat and everything, they open it up and just turn it up. And I'm just gonna see how many of you want to say thank you. Oh, my bad. I mean, they're very correctable. oh, thanks, coach, but they have to be reminded, these things were reiterated in us when I was coaching at Millwood my first year. And profanity like I've never seen. And that was checked when we were growing up. You did not curse in front of women, and you didn't curse in front of children. If you did, it was you in the locker room, you over here by yourself, in your boys' club, whatever, in the boiler room doing a domino game, but it was understood. You were corrected, you were checked. It was a thing of social embarrassment. You did not do that. And they were just cursing up a storm. I said, hold on, man. So I took a survey. I said, okay, how many of you all, profanity was used at home? I said, well, let me rephrase it. This is an unscientific survey. How many of y'all that did not use profanity at home? Oh, about 2 or 3 raised their hand. And it's so environmental. It's so practiced. This is not preparing, we're not preparing you for real world. When you have carte blanche, you use this anytime you want. And that's because it hasn't been mirrored. And it hasn't been reiterated over and over and over. And I had told one thing to me, I said, I told you about that. He said, I didn't use that word. And everybody said, yes, you did, man. Because it was so systemic, he didn't even know he had said it. And the whole class had to say, you did, man. He said, no, I didn't. They said, yes, you did. He said, and he just had an epiphany. He was like, wow, I'm sorry. And then he told me, he said, I'm not trying to be belligerent. The kids are just as great as they always have been. But they just haven't gotten the nurturing and the correction. He said, what you telling me now, just some things, Amber, you'll hear that it'll stick with you. What you telling me now is the first time I've ever heard this. No one has told me this before. What we heard from the cradle, and it was reiterated, not only at home, and it was modeled at home, it was reiterated at school and modeled, and in the church. So those were the 3 pillars, bulwarks, that raised us. I remember my first 9 weeks here. Jake Diggs, legendary principal, athlete, coach, here at Douglas. His last year was 73, my first year here. And I'm sitting in the window. I earned my spot. And he passes by. And he said, McCurdy, you stopped me. I stood up. I thought I had done something wrong. My mind is racing. It's like when the police stop you, you just start sweating. You don't know what you did. And he looks me up and down in front of everybody. And he knew what he was doing. He was making me sweat, right? He says, I didn't even know he knew my name. I turned out where he knows my family and all that, because everybody went to school together. Went to historical Black College in Langston, or they work together. They know each other. Very, very close community. He said, I see you make straight A's. He said, good work. Keep it up. That meant the world to me. Because, he was one that we looked up to. For him to know my name, for him to know what my grades were, and for them to encourage me, I was ready to run through a troop and leap over a wall. And so we did that. The rest of my academic career, who's who among high school students, presidents on a roll. And when we earned that Letterman jacket, that was, the pinnacle. To get your O, varsity Letterman jacket. And all the things that you accomplished on the O. Now they don't even know what a Letterman jacket is. And down your sleeve. And it was just so awesome. I was only able to participate athletically 2 semesters. And after having come, I'll tell you the story about my sister just graduated. She went to St. Gregory's, which was a junior college. and now it's gone now.
Yeah.
And OVU has gotten it now, but she went on the basketball scholarship. She just retired in Dallas, Texas. She's in the Guinness Hall of Fame. Awesome. 2 years older than I am, and they named the court after her now in Dallas, Texas, Skyline High School. So she put some numbers up down there. Big sister, and so she's gone to St. Gregory's. And so I come home, and I said, well, Daddy, I want to go to Douglas now. And Daddy said, well, why? I said, well, this is how conscious I was. I said, well, I know what McGinnis's tuition is, and I know what junior college private. She was on a basketball scholarship, but still, and McGinnis was a junior college tuition, especially if you're Protestant, not Catholic, even more. And so she said, my father said, well, don't worry about that. Money's no object. We're gonna find a way for you to go to school. That's the way he was. If you want to go there. And so then I said something. My father did his practice teaching here with Payah Miller, which is a frat brother. And my father and myself and Payah were in the same fraternity. The only one.
Go ahead and state it.
Don't say.
So go ahead and state it.
So that old boy black, that Alpha Phi Alpha 1906. So thank you for that. And so he said, if that's where you want to go, McGinnis, you can stay there. His money's not going to be a problem. I said, well, Daddy, this is another one of those pivotal forks in my life. We just did a writing project in Abbott this day on writing like a college essay practice and a prompt, writing prompts, and these are the kind of questions you'll see on a standardized test. What a pivotal event in your life that you experienced that changed your life? Detail it. What were the steps leading up to it, and what was the benefit of the experience after you make this life-changing decision? A pivotal fork in the road. And this was one for me. And I said, right now, you may not know how important the decision you're making, but a little later, you'll be able to see if it were not for that decision, you could have went in a whole different direction. And life is full of them. And so I said, well, Dad, this was it. I said, I always wanted to go to Douglas and be a Trojan. And there was a seminal moment between him and I, because a tear came out of his eyes. He said, you know what? I always wanted you to go to Douglas. But he never said anything. That's what my father was. One of the greatest decisions, even though I lost my junior year. If I had to do it all over again, I would have just come sooner. I would have came my sophomore year. Because I started and had a great, academically, socially, emotionally, I began to flourish.
Can you go into more detail about what attracted you to Douglas?
Good, thank you. Well, it was the culture, the tradition. I can sum it up in one word: the tradition, the winning tradition, the legacy, the history. Douglas is the first and the oldest black high school in the state of Oklahoma, and older than statehood. And so the story, the history, the stories that we grew up hearing in the barbershop. I go to the barbershop with my father, and they'll be talking about Ben Hart and Connie Sledge and Amos Thomas and Albert Chandler, Sugar Ray Hamilton. Prentice Goff, who was the first one who integrated Oklahoma University. And his doctor, Prentice Goff, he's passed now. Tremendous man. And they literally, back then the community would prime you to desegregate. And the community got together and chose him. He'd be because he was a great scholar. Eddie Evans, Charles Evans, to break the desegregation at OU, knowing that he was going to have to pioneer just like Jackie Robinson and so many. And he had a great career, went on, was a great statesman, educator, athlete, and a Douglas graduate. And so this is what we would hear all the time. And we knew the level of education. But listen, education was number one. Because if you did not pass, you did not play. And there was no exceptions to the rule. Moses F. Miller had one of the greatest winning seasons in the country, like 50-something straight years in a row. And in 12 years, he won 9 state championships. And lost 11 games in 12 years.
Wow.
And so several, in his whole career, 7 undefeated seasons. So those were the things with the subcomposite of what I wanted, why I wanted to be here. That was my process. But I was quiet. I never said anything. I had to go. When you have one child going, so they take both of you instead of doing like this. And so as fine as that academic school as Bishop McGinnis was, I needed the nurturing and the care and the positivity, encouragement that comes from a historically black college. And that was my same decision in my historically black college, as it was in my historically black high school. And I think there's a need for that more than ever. And so when I told him that, he said, okay, well, we're gonna make it happen. And so I came over and enrolled and made the starting 5, but then the letter came. That was another sad moment when he asked me to come in after practice. He said, come on in and sit down in the den. I went in, sat down, and he opened the letter and gave it to me. And we both cried. I had to sit out that whole year. No telling what, where I could have went Division I or whatever after that. But because that's the year where you really learn and, you get exposure, you get your name out there. And so my senior year, I was leading the team in fouling out. I was doing sophomore fouls and stuff, just energy, just all over the place. Well, I settled down after a while, but it was awesome. So those were the processes in my thinking and how I came here. And in the process of time, there's an old sitcom called Welcome Back, Kotter, where he goes back and teaches at his alma mater in inner city New York, right? And so here I am back teaching at my high school where I graduated from. And it is kind of surreal. Now, this is not the same facility, so that's a little different. We graduated from what we call 900 Northeastern, and that every year, Amber, it would win. There was a contest between Oklahoma City Public Schools, who had the best and the most beautiful and luxurious campus. Douglas would win every year. They had the famous ivy on the wall, and it was immaculate. It was shaped like diamonds, like a honeycomb of squares all along the expanse of the front wall. And you'd come in off of, this was Eastern instead of MLK, and there was a long sidewalk. It was a circle where you could drop your child off, and the long sidewalk would come up. Well, we know now that after the desegregation, one of the hub of the community was the school. You can watch the demise of our communities when the school began to go down. You need to get in. And so the campus would get, to reiterate, the most beautiful campus every year. That's all of Oklahoma City Public Schools, Southeast, U.S. Grand, same OKCPS right there as it is now. And Douglas, it was so picturesque and beautiful. We had the acreage, because this used to be the fairgrounds. The grass was immaculate. The flowers were immaculate. The school pride, the halls were immaculate, because the other upperclassmen would not let you come here destructive. This is a privilege and a joy. Your desire to be here was the fulfillment of all your dreams, and we're not gonna let you fail. You're not gonna come here trashing out things. and you're gonna respect the property. You did not walk. They said, Mr. Dr. Moon would not let people walk on the grass. You had to walk on the cement. And the farther you go back in the yearbook, they dressed for success every day. And the men had to wear ties, the faculty, shirt and ties, and so that's the tradition. You know, tradition is something that's handed down. And all it takes for the next generation to not get it is for it not to be handed down. So, you know, you can strain a gnat, swallow camel, and blame the students, but really it's the generation before that someone slept, somebody fumbled the ball, somebody didn't hand off the baton, because they can't appreciate what they have been taught. So we had that going for us. You understood when you got here. It was it befell you to hold up what had been given and cherished and honored. And so in that day, all the black high schools would play each other. It was 3 classes. And Douglas was the largest class, Tulsa, Washington, the largest class. And so with that long winning streak, everybody would talk about Douglas. And they would travel also. They played teams in Wichita, they played teams in Texas, and they were nationally ranked.
Wow. Nationally
ranked in basketball, you know. And so since I've been here, we're the only school in Oklahoma history that have won 7 state basketball tournaments out of 8 years. Up at that time, there were several schools that had won 4 in a row. But then we won, right? 6 in a row, and then lost that 7, and then won the next year. So that's 7 out of 8 years. No one has ever done that. And so those athletic accomplishments were great, but nothing as great as the academic prestige. So don't tell me you can't have both. You know, it's the same thing. It's the same rigor and the demand for excellence that is in the classroom can be achieved also athletically, because it's all about the desire and the knowledge and the execution. You know, in the classroom, the same execution on the field. So, but that standard doesn't come from the OSSAA or from the state. That comes from the people who work here and the teachers who demand it and the community who demands it. And so when I'm now somewhere now in the community with my Douglas coaching year on, you can still see the awe and the respect, because you know, you're a coach, you're Douglas, and especially the older generation, they knew what that meant. You know, when we grew up, the 2 prestigious positions in our community was a pastor and a teacher. You know, when you value what you do, well, that's where, you know, you're rewarded in your income for it. We pay what we value. So the teacher has been so devalued in the nation right now. So that's why the pay is the way it is. So that's my political statement for the day.
So you said during one of your first year at Douglas was when they were busing in white students?
Yes.
So can you talk about what the culture was kind of like at Douglas during that time?
And that was like in 1971, 72, you know, right before I got here.
Oh, okay.
And so it was full blown by the time I got here. And what I think, what we have to go on record as saying, you know, historically black high school was always open to everyone. But they were created, you know, like right after the Civil War, because we could not go there. So they created these for us. And, but they were always open for all people of color. And so it was not strange for us for whites to come, and they were treated with equality, respect, and on the football field, you know, some of the first. Now, what had changed was, by the time I got back, in that 3 months of summer from my junior year to my senior year, I left in May 74. Okay, came back in August 74, and then in December January was 75, and I graduated in 75. So in 3 months between my junior and senior year, the school had changed. And what changed it? We began to have administration who did not understand tradition. We had our first principal in Douglas's history. It was maybe about 45 years ago, who was Caucasian. And he did not know, or nor do I think he cared to know, about Douglas's tradition. And it wasn't so much color, I'm gonna go down and by saying that, it was of disrespect for the traditions of Douglas. You cannot go to OU and not embrace their traditions. You're not gonna be there long. Because it's winter, you know how we are when it comes to football. It's winter, you gone. NFL, not for long, that's what it stands for. So it's very arrogant to come somewhere and don't respect all the legacies of the past. You will alienate yourself very quick. And another thing is that they did not have stock in community. The 2:30 whistle, gone. Sports game events, I can never remember seeing them. And then we had our first, that same year, white basketball coach in the history of the school. All that happened my senior year. So the traditions of homecoming, our pep rallies, I'm sorry, but our pep rallies here don't come close. I'm very, I'm not holding my voice anymore. I tell them this is a joke. This is nowhere near. This is not even a pep rally. Now y'all getting together and dancing and rapping and doing stuff. We had spirit sticks where each class, we love Douglas, yes we do, we love Douglas, how about you? And so whichever class cheered the loudest, sophomores had to sit here. Freshmen, juniors, seniors. Of course, the seniors won every year. Of course, we thought that was political. We knew we out-cheered them my junior year, but it was exciting. We played Tulsa, Washington, and it was a big deal. Someone got a real coffin, somebody, uncle, somebody, Roth's funeral home was right there. And we had put a papier-mâché awning on the inside of it, because we played in Tulsa, Washington. And so they had a processional come in, and a girl was crying behind the casket like it was her baby. We was in robes and the preacher was in front of it, and the whole school just went nuts. And they opened it up there, their hornet was, a dead hornet. And they got him out, shook him up and stuff, and threw him back in there. And the band would come in, they would do some of the Trojan war dance. They'd sit at the half court, and they'd hit the bass drum all between their legs and do all kinds of stuff, and throwing the batons back and forth with each other. It was just, we were just mesmerized. We were so crunk. The halls were decorated. Everything was orange and black. So Tulsa's orange and black as well. Our fight song was very similar. And we battled back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the schools were so close. You're talking about a rivalry. We call it, that was the Soul Bowl. Because when I was in school, Millwood was still almost all white. U.S. Grant, in my lifetime, I can remember Northeast was all white. Dr. Dow, Oklahoma City Public School, he was a dentist, because he said the education that my children are receiving at Douglas is inferior as far as the materials and the books. And that was right. My mother said when she finished at Booker T. Washington and Enid, they got Enid High's hand-me-down band, uniform hand-me-down books. Now they could be 4 or 5 years out of date, wouldn't be up on the current president. But they took that, right? Because the inherency was, the inequality was that they were not funded correctly. Turn of the century was a Pless versus Ferguson, which they ratified segregation, the United States Supreme Court, and they said it is constitutional that we not be educated on the same par. And so it wasn't until, some 50 years later when that was overthrown, until some 25 years later before it was actually implemented. So that was the fallacy there, and why so much he sued Oklahoma City Public Schools, and he won. And that's what opened Northeast. Some of my professors in Langston were the first classes that went to Northeast and graduated. And they would talk about the tensions and the halls of anger that they had to go through. And I can remember when we played Putnam City, that was the mid-state championship almost every year. They had great basketball teams. Alvin Adams, who went and played for the Phoenix Suns, he was the Rookie of the Year, a great player, right? The Neff boys, all of them, we battled every basketball. It was going to be Douglas or Putnam City for it was a mid-state conference then. Well, when we went over there, they were shooting us with staples and fighting, and kids were coming home. And so when they came over here, you know, police went everywhere, and it was a lot of racial teaching back in the day. So, but we didn't have any fights or anything in the halls because we had great student leadership. You know, the administration could talk, but it was the students who were the great leaders. And that's what you love to see. You know, that's what makes a great team. Great captains, great leadership, and that's how you build that winning tradition. So the culture of Douglas was excellent, even though it had changed from the administration and they didn't know tradition. And looking back on it, you know, they had made mistakes in that they didn't know what to hold in the standard, you know, physically, emotionally, academically. They were just ignorant of it, and they did not know.
So what are your thoughts about the school consolidations and the urban renewal that's taking place currently?
Well, I thought that it was, I didn't understand why Northeast parents were all upset about that because of, first of all, they left the community, and with only 100 people, you know, it's just not fiscal responsible for a school that big to be able to, you couldn't operate a household like that. You know, utilities and all that, you couldn't do it. It's just not common sense. And so then they want to rally and get upset. Well, you got to send your children back. You got to support the school. You got to make sure that enrollment is up if you want it to stay open. So, you know, it was a big move on all of that and how they changed the name and all that. Well, this is the only historically black high school. And we need to make sure we keep it and make sure that academically it's on par socially. Because we're going to be an example. We're going to be the ones looked at in the microscope. We can't, what goes on in other places can't go on here. And so I think the consolidation was necessary. We had buildings that were not being utilized, and you know, we had a teacher shortage and budget crunch, and so I really support the superintendent with some tough decisions. And they went to, had town hall meetings, and then they want to get upset when they had opportunity to put into it, you know. And so, but the urban renewal, the gentrification is happening everywhere. And so you see it, Midtown, Bricktown, we've lost the Deuce, and that's a part of poor black leadership. The black leadership I grew up with was Hannah Atkins, Goree James. His wife was a legendary teacher here, Madam James, and it was what's his name? E. Melvin Porter. And I mean, they were strong and they protected. And I remember in the summer, if you needed a job, you call down there and they say, well, come down here. You know, the job is go down there and go to the courthouse and do this. That's how we got jobs, you know. And they were pioneers. Freddie Williams, you know, John Green, just great leadership on the east side. So, you know, the urban renewal, some have referenced it, I don't know if you've heard this, the Negro removal. Mm-hmm. And that's what they call it. Because where Kennedy High School, Robert Kennedy came down here himself and dedicated that school because President Kennedy had just been assassinated, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And so the Kennedy family, they wanted to name that after him. This is the Kennedy Edition. My mother lives in Kennedy Edition. That's named after John F. Kennedy, and who was very loved in the Black community. And so they named that there. Robert Kennedy and the Kennedy Foundation would donate money because it was named after their brother, a former president of the United States of America. And then they changed it to FD Moon, where it was already a Moon Junior High. And OU Medical just swallowed it up. That's where that was. My grandmother lived right there where Presbyterian is. It's OU Medical now. That was all urban renewal that came in. And though you couldn't see Kennedy because of the houses that ran up and down Eastern at the time. So when they built that, because it kind of sits off the road kind of down, they had bought all that out and removed them. Where OU Medical, that's one of the biggest medical complexes in the Southwest. All that was predominantly Black. My father said when they came, a lot of rural communities moved to the city after they finished college. And both of my parents are college graduates and grandparents and educators everywhere, doctors, lawyers, all that. But he said if you live north of A Street, you would live in High on the Hall. I can hear him now, High on the Hall. And so 4th, 2nd, 3rd, all that was the historic Black community. Well, the first Black community was Sandtown. And that's where I-40 came right through it. That is the first and the oldest Black community. A lot of people don't know that. You got to go on treasure hunts to find these things. I went to go see my sister and my cousin went to Moon, FD Moon. And so it's still there. And you can still see it in the sand strip up here. And Old Douglas was on 8th and High, which was, they just bought those and renovated those in apartments. There was an Olympic-sized pool in there. It was incredible. The architecture, that was after, was it Roosevelt, after World War II, the right to work. And that was one of the greatest grants. And I mean, all kind of structures, a lot of Truman Elementary School. My grandmother was a teacher at Truman. It's right across from the AME Church now. They burned down not long ago. And that was incredible elementary school. Then the Edwards Edition, which was a very prestigious, had their own hospital. Not too many Black communities in the country had their own hospital then. And they were full of educators. And Edwards is a historic community in that high. And the elementary school was the hub. My great aunt, my grandmother's sister, taught there. My grandmother taught at Truman. So we've seen the change of urban renewal. But the one thing has been constant is Douglas High School. We've seen them come and go. And we know that we got to fight to keep what is traditionally ours.
What do you think makes Douglas such a constant amid all of this renewal?
Well, it's the alumni, it's the graduates, it's the tradition, the successes, and the respect that when I first met with the superintendent, he called a group of us down and we sat around in the table down at the new Board of Education, which is Northeast on the first floor. And some of the fraternity members wanted to meet with him. So we all Black and gold up and we down there talking with him. And my first question to him, because we knew the pathway to success was coming. Pathway to greatness, is it?
Mm-hmm.
PTG. PTG. And so my first question to him, Dr. Daniel, what's the future of Douglas High School? Speaking from all along, knowing the history. And he looked at me and said, Douglas is going to be fine. And we have to do eternal vigilance. It's the same way with Langston. They want that ground. When I was in school, they wanted it because we wanted a Supreme Court order to minimize our state prisons. There were overcrowded state prisons in the state of Oklahoma. And so Langston would be a prime area for a state prison. And this is when privatized prisons started really coming in. And we boycotted. We went to the state capitol and boycotted to save Langston University. because there's a mindset. You know, you make more money out of you, incarcerating you, than pennies on the dollar to educate you. So the same fight is going on everywhere. Historically black colleges, historically black high schools. It's going to take internal vigilance. It's going to take the alumni being strong, and you're going to have to be successful. You know, no one will argue with you when you're putting out graduates, your retention rate, you know, in college, your grade point averages, your ACT scores, all your standards, you know, your letter grade. Every school in Oklahoma now gets a letter grade. You're in the B and A category. But if you fail in school, your behavior reports everywhere, all in the news media and all that, and people start saying, well, you know what? You know, we're gonna come take that $1 million facility, you know, $4.5 million facility. And so it's gonna take us saying, no, here's the standards that we believe that can stand up to any school in the state, any school in the nation. That's the way it was. And there's no reason why it can't be there again. But what we're missing is this word called tradition. You know, I love the scripture that says, do not remove the boundary stones that the fathers have set. And that's out of Isaiah, and that was a warning. You know, like you see a box that says, danger, you know, don't open explosive chemicals. But if you do this, this is what happened. This is a warning. So the boundary stones are set up by the previous generation. It's like your property. And they would use stones, you know, instead of landmarks and stuff. Your property extends here and goes there, and your NASA was a physical lot description. And but that's the way it was. And so what happens, if you move those stones, the next generation are not going to know the boundaries. And so, as a sermon I preached, being a pastor, somebody's messing with the stones. And so, once those stones are gone, the next generation is going to lose their way. They don't know, hey, this is how you treat a lady. This is how respectful you are. You do not use profanity in the sight of a woman and sight of a child. You don't teach your children those things. You got to be able to do as I do, not just do as I say. And so that's what makes a great school and a great community. So with the demise of the black high school, what happens, the community begins to lose its way. Look at the thriving communities now. It's because they have thriving schools. Why are people wanting to move? They have a movie, Field of Dreams. The famous quote in there, you build it and they will come. When you build that school, and they will come. So all these fine schools are popping up. My sister lives in Dallas, on my way down, I can see it. And Garvin, Gainesville, and you just see these fabulous schools on the side of the road. You know where they come from? Avalon, Texas, businesses, community, alumni, and the schools are high functioning, and they have everything that you would want. You look at Deer Creek, that looks like the LA Forum out there. And these were big communities when we grew up, you know. It was just a barn out there, if we even went out there. And so they are fabulous. And I think it's the greatest thing that those people believe in education. And there was a time, you know, whenever we got together, we built a church and a school. And that's who we were. We were known for education because we knew one day doors were going to be open. That's what Dr. King used to say. And when they open, you got to be ready. You can't try to go get ready. When that door is open, you got to be standing there, ready to go through. So that's what it's going to take. And those high functioning schools, and you'll start seeing people move back in because the urban renewal now, my Lincoln Terrace over by State Capitol, people trying to move in there left and right. My sister works in a retired state down there at in the market in Dallas, and she met a lady. She's both of them from Oklahoma City. She's a realtor, and she told her where she lives. She said, "Listen, whatever you do, don't sell that property. Something is going on in Lincoln Terrace that in 5 years, the lot right next to me is for sale." And the lady, she lost her lot. She was older. She let the house, you know, deteriorate. The children didn't keep it up. And the city kept wanting and wanting. They finally tore it down. Well, that lot is now $60,000 for the lot, where somebody could have bought it for $2,000 or $3,000, 10, 15 years ago. So that exponential rate shows you something is up. So, and then people that move out, they try to move back in, but then they can't get the bank loan, they can't qualify for it. So my father said Oklahoma City is going to be something one day. He would always tell us that. He's gone now, so. And I'm watching it in my own lifetime. I'm watching it.
So what went into your decision to come back and teach at Douglas? And what are major changes that you see now with the culture here at Douglas?
Good. My decision to come back, I pastored at Enid for 20 years. So I came back, got my master's, came back. I came out of, I didn't come into education right away. I was in work for the Department of Human Services, and I pastored, and I still pastor. I'm bivocational, but I came back to teach. So when I came back and moved back to Oklahoma City, it was my heart's desire to come back and teach at Douglas and coach at Douglas. And so at that time, they were laying off teachers. There was the recession in Oklahoma City, and I go down. The athletic director was Phil Ingersoll, and he was a good friend of my sister. And my sister did assistant coaching here. And, with Mom and Mac, they put some numbers up, and so I couldn't get back in them. So I had to substitute. My mother said, if you want to get in Oklahoma City Public Schools, you might have to sub. I didn't want to sub because I knew I used to teach subs. I said, God, you have a sense of humor. And so I became a sub, and so I began to get my name known, and they started asking me to sub, and so I was sub here. And so on the whole process of time, spot opened up. Willis Alexander recommended me to hire, and I started coaching middle school, everything. So it was great. So that my desire was the same desire when I wanted to come here and go to school, because I felt the call to help and mentor and model young men and women. And it's just been wonderful. This is my 6th year, so this is my first class from 7th grade to seniors. I've watched them develop from little baby, they don't like that word, baby, from little middle schoolers to they getting tall now, they jaw line and losing that baby fat, voice didn't drop. And so, tradition, we go, well, I knew you back then. You were this tall. So I'm doing that now. So they just love it, and they just need all that. Someone said a child needs so much praise a day. And so, they're getting that. And that's my joy to be here. It really is an extension of ministry. Holding them to tough standard, holding them to academics, holding them to behavior, holding them to manners, starting using these things. So I was in class today, I said, how was your weekend? I said, well, it was all right. I said, now, humanity said, well, how was yours, coach? I said, well, mine was fine. Thank you for asking. Then I said, well, how was your mother? My mother's fine. I said, now you ask me, how's your mother? And I said, fine, thank you for asking. They just fall out laughing. They have never heard this. You just reciprocate with manners. Fine, thank you, how was yours? And so these are just some basic things that is my joy every morning to be here. It's the best job in the world. So it's ministry. And so now the restoration of being here and knowing what it was and the challenge of trying to get it back. It's a slow process, but it's a doable process. And that's what I'm excited about. But it's gonna take us being verbal, and we can't be passive and sit back and not say nothing. When you see something that we know is not of that spirit of excellence, see, it was wrong for the powers that be to think 7th graders needed to be with high schoolers. Education is one of the institutions that wants to experiment all the time. Whatever the new socio-psychological term that comes in, for some reason we always want to follow California. Mazzano or the all year round schools. But by the time it gets here from the coast, they done already went back to traditional. They tried, it didn't work, but we still want to try it. I was so happy when we went back to 9 months. I didn't know what to do. And then one year they voted on it, they still wanted to stay 12 months. There's no time for the students to recover. There was a brain drain, all the new studies that think, okay, they're gonna retain more. They're overstressed, the kids today they're constantly in too much. They need time to fish, ride their bike, grow, socialize. They need that time. They come back fresh, reinvigorated. It's too hot to start school August the 1st, and we were not regenerating. Teachers, by the time 4th of July is over, just forget it. Your vacation is over. So they said, well, we had longer time during the year. Not the same. When we were in school was Memorial Day. First day, you went in school past Memorial Day. And then you wasn't back in school before Labor Day. So that was a summer. Parents could schedule their time around them, vacations, and go and experience things that only travel can teach you. But now, everything was so shortened. So that just shows you the social psychological experiment that education goes through. 7th graders should have never been here. They were dominated. They were not emotionally mature. And the grade, they didn't get a middle school grade. It was the Douglas whole grade. And so that behavior and lack of focus in school would drag us down to a D school when we actually was functioning on a B level. So hopefully now we're going to be able to indicate that. Middle school needs to be that. Middle school, when we were in school, was 7th and 8th. And then I remember experimenting with 5th grade centers, just all 5th graders. Listen, why try to fix something if it's not broke? We had generations of success, K through 6, 7, 8, some 7, 8, and 9, and that you couldn't get until you were 10th grade. All that did was make you salivate and just couldn't wait to get here. And you got here a lot more mature. There's a vast difference between a sophomore and a freshman, emotionally, mentally. And that's what it takes to function in a classroom. You've got to be more focused and mature. So the home unit is under siege. We have more single parents. We have more drugs introduced, and more violence and gangs and tensions. And these things rob students from the attention span and the focus. They think school is just totally not relevant. I don't need this. What good is this going to help me? And so the dropout rate between minorities, Native Americans, African Americans is appalling. The homelessness, we have, I'm going to say now, is addressing homeless students. When we grew up, that was unheard of. You might have stayed with aunt, uncle, somebody, extended family, but to actually be homeless, I can't ever remember one student growing up. So that means there's going to have to be special programs, special outreach, and that's what we're trying to address now in public schools. So I'm excited, but we need to get away from all this that we tried, and it just has been proven not to work. Let's stay with the standard and work it.
So lastly, we hear Douglas, pride of the East Side. So if there's anything that you would want someone in 50 years to come back and know about Douglas High School and why it is the pride of the East Side, what would you want them to know?
Well, we want them to be able to look at the legacy. 50 years from now, we'll be almost 200 years old. And, the tradition and the history will stand the test of time. Look at what this school did and the impact and the change in the leadership that came out of here. Ralph Allison Library, graduate. Charlie Parker, graduate. Connie Johnson, first Black woman to run for governor in the state of Oklahoma, graduate. I'm talking about, academia, I'm talking about music. I'm talking about athletics, contributions in the social arena, in the literary arena, in every arena come from a high school that needs to be celebrated and cherished. And 50 years from now, I know we'll be even adding to that. There's some students here now that will be world famous. And they'll be able to say, hey, I got my start at Douglas High School. And I want to thank God for Coach Mack. He touched my life.
Well, thank you so much for participating. You gave
Thank
a
you.
lot of really rich
Thanks.
information.
I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No,